So this is going to be a tutorial on another version of the green caddis larvae that I really like to tie. It's very similar to the green caddis larvae pattern that I posted a tutorial on previously, but I wanted to tie this pattern because I wanted to show how just a couple different materials that you use really changes the outcome of the fly pattern. And I keep both of the versions in my box, and they've both done very well. I've caught a lot of fish on both of these patterns when I know that the green caddis, the free living green caddis, are around in the streams that I fish. This pattern, how to tie it, is pretty much exactly the same, but I wanted to post this tutorial anyway. Just because the outcome is a little bit different. This is a little bit of a closer imitation. It looks a little bit closer to what the green caddis actually looks like. But I'll quickly go through the materials of what I need to tie this pattern. And so of course you need your vise, you need your scissors, and your finishing tool. Your bobbin and thread. I like to use the same thread for a lot of these nymph patterns, the smaller nymph patterns, and I use a sheer 14-knot thread in dark brown. I'm about out. This is the color that I use. It's a dark brown color. And the hook that I'm using for this one, the last green caddis pattern that I posted a tutorial on, I used a multi-use curved hook. For this one, I'm using a Scud hook in size 18. This is a more realistic size for this pattern. The green caddis larvae tend to be fairly small, and the Scud hook adds a little bit of a different shape to the overall pattern. And so I'm tying this on a size 18 Scud hook. This is from J. Stockert. You can use whichever brand you prefer. Most of the brands do have this style hook, the heavy Scud. And I'm adding a little bit of weight. You can add a tungsten bead head or something like that, but I'm going to be using this lead wire, a few wraps of this lead wire in size 0.01. For the abdomen of the fly, I'm using this microfine dry fly dubbing. It is a dry fly dubbing, but it works just as well for nymphs. You get a lot of control over the thickness of the dubbing with this, and it's in the color green caddis. For the thorax, I'm going to be using a hare's ear plus dubbing. You can use a hare's ear. I really like the extra flash that this dubbing has, and I'm using a black. That's the color for the thorax that I'm going to do. You can also do it in chocolate or a more natural brown color, like so. But I'm gonna be tying this in a black. For the rib, I use Danville's fine gold wire, and for the pearl, or for the flashback, I use this pearl tinsel, which is a really good material to use for a flashback. And for the finishing touches, I like to add a couple dabs of this hardest hull head cement to the thread before I do the finishing knots to finish the fly. And so that's all you need to use or need to have to tie this pattern, and I'll go ahead and start the tutorial. So the first thing I like to do is pinch the barb. I always mention this. Pinch the barb with my vise. That's personal preference. And then you get your hook. You can secure your hook into your vise. Make sure that hook shank is fairly horizontal, and start your thread like so, and bring that back to where that hook shank starts to bend, about there, and then you can trim your excess thread like so. Next, I add a little bit of weight in the form of this lead wire, and I've just pinched off a piece about like that long, and I'm going to start that and wrap it just on the hook shank over that thread base to about there, and then you can wiggle it, wiggle the end pieces to get them to break off right at the base. And then I add a dab of this head cement just to get everything, just to secure everything down. And I bring my thread and build a bit of a taper at the base of this this lead wire, and then make some tight wraps over top of this wire just to get everything nice and secured down. And then once you have a couple wraps over that, you can bring your thread back to the base where your thread ended there, like so. So next I'll take a piece of this gold wire and I'll bring it up right next to the side of the hook shank and make a couple wraps to secure that down. And then I'll take a piece of this pearl tinsel, and again I'll bring it up to the right next to the shank of the hook and do one loose wrap just to have it loosely secured down, and that way I can kind of adjust things. I want it to sit right on top of that hook shank because it's going to be pulled over top of the abdomen and the thorax, and so I want it sitting right on top of that hook shank. And once you have that secured in there, you can make a couple tight wraps to get everything tight down, and just make sure that's sitting right on top there. That's pretty good. And at this point you want to bring your thread up and make tight wraps, tightly secure everything down. You can bring your thread up. If your tinsel was a little bit too much there, you can just trim that extra off. And then bring your thread all the way back down. And you can see that lead wire really helped with the taper. Build that taper body. And so next we're going to be taking our green caddis dubbing and building the abdomen of the fly. And we can go ahead and just roll that onto our thread, like so. Bring that up with the side of your finger up to the hook. And we're going to start building our abdomen up. And it can be a little bit thick because that gold rib and the tinsel will narrow things out a little bit. They'll tighten things down and thin it up. And we just want to keep building this abdomen up. We're going to go a little tiny bit past halfway of the length of the hook, and I pulled a little bit of that off. I had a little bit of extra dubbing on there, a little bit more than I needed, so I just pulled it off. And we're going to go a little bit halfway, or a little bit past halfway, like I said. And I'm actually going to add a tiny bit more here, just a tiny bit more, like so. And you could pull that back a little bit. So we're a little bit past halfway. You can see from this point to this point we're just a tiny bit past halfway. And so now that our abdomen is tight, or is in there, our dubbing abdomen is built up, we can pull that flashback over top and do an overhand wrap, like so. And you can grab that bobbin and with one hand pull that tinsel tight, and the other hand with your bobbin pull that, get a really tight wrap over top, and then make a couple more tight wraps just to secure everything down. And you can see that tinsel is laid right over top of that dubbing body. And at this point, you don't want to cut this excess. This is what we're going to be using to pull over top of our thorax as well. So don't cut the excess tinsel, just let that hang there. And then we're going to be building up or pulling our gold wire rib up over top of that flashback, and that really secures everything down. It secures that flashback down so it doesn't shift and slide, and everything is nice and secure. And bring that gold rib all the way up to that, where you ended that thorax up here. And do, again, an overhand wrap, and get it tight. You can let go of that gold wire and then get a couple more tight wraps. And then we want to grab our tinsel and pull it backwards the way we came. Make a couple more tight wraps. That way that this tinsel is right there where the abdomen ended, and so we can pull it over top of the thorax when we need it. Then you can cut your excess gold wire like so. Use your fingernail to get that gold wire flat down so you can tie it. Tie it down with your thread like so. You can tidy everything up. Tidy everything up, make sure everything's tied down and secure. Okay, and so the next step is to build up our thorax. And again, for the thorax, we're going to be using this black Hair Zero Plus dubbing. And we can go ahead and add that dubbing to our thread. This Hair Zero dubbing is fairly easy to use, so we can go ahead and add that to our thread. And we can start building up our thorax. We want it about the same thickness as this abdomen here. Where the abdomen ended, we want to match that thickness. Like so. And we can continue building up that thorax like so. And we want to bring that up just about there. Give us a little bit of room to finish the fly and tie everything down. You can pull those fibers back with your fingers. Just about like that. You can see that thickness matches the abdomen right there. And the next step is to pull our tinsel back over top. And you can do an overhand wrap again, like so. And pull your bobbin tight and pull that tinsel tight with both hands, and so that it's tightly secured in there. And then you can make a couple more tight wraps on this side, pull that tinsel back, make a couple tight wraps on the other side like so. And you can cut your excess off. And at this point we want to finish our fly. I'll add a couple dabs of this head cement to the thread. And take my finishing tool and do, I like to do 2 finishing knots. So I'll do 1, get that head cement all up in there, all up in that knot and on the head there. And then I'll do 1 more, couple wraps there, like so. Cinch everything down and cut your thread. And you can see there's a lot of these fibers sticking out. And you can go around, you can take your scissors and cut the ones that are really long, really however you like the finished product to look. You can adjust those fibers. You can take your fingernail or a piece of Velcro, or this tool to pull out some of those fibers if you want it extra leggy. It's really up to you. This Hair Zero Plus dubbing has a lot of those longer fibers, a lot of that those flash fibers, and so you can really adjust how the final product looks. And when that gets wet, it looks really, really alive and buggy. It's really quite impressive. How this dubbing really adds to the liveliness of this pattern. And that is the finished fly. You can see the flashback, the gold rib building that, or giving it that segmented look, that bright green caddis abdomen, and the darker thorax, and those long fibers as the legs coming down there. And again, I wanted to tie this pattern just to show that a couple of changes in the materials they use can really impact the final look of the fly. And both this version of the green caddis and the previous version, I've caught many fish on. They're very effective to use when the fish are keying in on those free-living green caddis larvae. And so that's the green caddis. I hope you liked the video, and thank you for watching. And until next time.